Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the extraordinary world of the ADHD Artist Studio. As we enter, one cannot help but be struck by the sheer disorder that reigns supreme. On every surface, odd supplies and random knickknacks lay strewn about like fallen leaves in an autumnal forest. In the centre of this artistic mayhem sits the artist, their presence akin to an elusive creature immersed in its natural habitat.
Would you believe me if I said I didn't realize that everyone was going to see how disorganized my studio is? I just have no good way of cropping it out without cutting into the artwork. The rest of the video will be much better, I promise. Okay, so what's happening here is that I'm transferring the tracing of my art I painted digitally onto an A3 wooden panel. I had already gessoed the panel off screen to prepare the surface for acrylic painting. Next, I removed the tracing paper and used the pencil to draw back whatever I didn't manage to trace. The reason I chose to go with acrylic paint this time is because this painting is intended for sale. Unlike poster colours, acrylic paint will stay vibrant for a longer time. However, I must admit that I'm not an expert when it comes to working with acrylic paint. Luckily, YouTube came to the rescue and recommended an amazing tutorial by Studio Wildlife, which I've linked below as per usual. So for the time being, I'm keeping things simple and focusing on the values just as the tutorial suggested. That means I'll be sticking to a monochromatic palette using only one colour, which in this case is green, along with two neutral shades, black and white. I also printed a grayscale version of my painting as a reference to help me along the way. Another key aspect of my painting process is the technique I'm using called glazing. I dilute the paint with water so I can apply thin, translucent layers to increase the darkness of parts of the painting, kind of like shading with a pencil. The difference is that you must wait till the paint is completely dry before you apply the next layer, or else the paint underneath might peel off. This artwork is made for a competition called Sketch for Survival, organised by a UK charity, Explorers Against Extinction. I began working on this artwork back in April, and I've already submitted my artwork online. So now I have to wait until July 13th to find out if I made it to the long list. If I do, then I'll have the chance to send the physical painting all the way to UK. From there, it could be selected for either the exhibition collection or the highly commended collection. Honestly, I am going to be very proud of myself even if I just got selected to be on the long list, since only 100 of these artworks would be part of the exhibition collection. They will be displayed in both London and Edinburgh. Then they will be auctioned online, with the proceeds going directly towards conservation efforts. The rest of the artworks from the long list would go to the highly commended collection. These artworks will also be sold online and even at pop-up shops following the exhibition. I'm thankful for the existence of this event, as they are giving artists good exposure, as well as giving us a chance to contribute to animal conservation through our art. One of the rules states that the chosen wildlife must be on the IUCN Red List, which means that they're facing a high risk of extinction. With this in mind, I decided to focus on the critically endangered European wild hamster. Note that these wild hamsters are quite different from our beloved pet hamsters. They're twice the size of a typical Syrian hamster and prove to be quite aggressive even when facing predators more than twice their size. These adorable creatures are mainly found in Ukraine, but unfortunately, they've been pushed to the brink of extinction due to habitat destruction, environmental pollution, and targeted extermination as agricultural pests. Right now, there are only a few hundred of them left in the wild. That's why I named my artwork Peace Offering, as I believe that these hamsters never intended to cause any harm and simply wanted to survive. I named the hamster in this painting Turkey Ham. That's because it's named after my sister's hamster, Chicken Ham. Now, Chicken Ham got his moniker because of his skittish nature and also due to the fact that my sister let her primary school kids name him. During the June holidays, my sister would go on trips abroad with her husband and kids, so my mom and I would heavy-sit Chicken Ham. It's like he's on vacation with us, so I make sure to hand-feed him treats every single day. So much so that when my sister came to pick him up, she said that he had definitely gained some weight. Oops. Okay, sorry for digressing. I'm now starting to glaze colour over turkey ham. I'm using a sharp brush and mixing neon pink with white and a tad of neon yellow for the skin colour. Black was sparingly added for the shadow areas. I then switched to an angled brush as I move on to the fur. The white fur is mainly white, mixed with yellow ochre and black. And the brown fur is mainly yellow ochre, red and black. It isn't very obvious here, but I also added a little green from the background into the white fur at the chin and at the mouth to represent the reflected light from the grass and from the stem of the flower. The bright decision of switching to a top-down mode was finally made as I started on the background. Now I am going to just skip to the painting of the flower and to the rest of turkey ham to spare you the agony of watching me repaint the background at least 5 times. I start off by painting the center of the daisy dark brown. Then I mix the thick patch of neon yellow and neon orange and use a dotting tool to dot on the center of the daisy for a bumpy texture. I make sure to refer to my reference for the size, position and patterns in the dots, doubling back to make the dots bigger when necessary. In nature, the dots actually follow a pattern called the Fibonacci sequence, which forms a spiral design that can be found everywhere from how a plant grows to the shape of a human ear. Following the design as best as you can would make your artwork look that much more realistic. After the paint dries, white and brown was lightly dusted over it for some shading. I follow up with a thin wash of neon yellow and white around the perimeter to create a glow effect. I use grey and white to define the shape of the petals, add shadow, and to indicate where the petals overlapped. Neon yellow, neon orange, and grey was glazed over the edges of the petals to create a subsurface scattering effect. That's just a fancy term for the way light from the back penetrates and scatters within semi-translucent materials rather than bouncing off its surface to create a glowing effect. While painting this, I had switched my palette for an acrylic panel, naively thinking that it would be possible to peel off the acrylic paint from it once it's dry. Well, I thought wrong. Now I have an acrylic panel layered with paint that I don't know what to do with, so if any of you have a solution to this, please let me know. Your help is going to be greatly appreciated. I moved on to turkey ham's ears. White is added to the outer edges of his ears as a base for me to glaze on colours later. Brown and pink were added to the outer corners of his ear skin, and then beige and white was blended towards the middle where the skin is the thinnest, again to create the effect of subsurface scattering. Rinse and repeat on the other side. I blocked in the top of the ears with brown, and I added strokes with a slightly lighter colour to create the fur texture. I then continued to define the shadows, highlights, and texture of turkey ham's face with a small, sharp brush. White, followed by a strong cobalt blue, is painted on the center of his eye to hint at the ambient lighting from the sky. Brown, black and white were mixed together to define the eyelids. It is then blended off with black towards the sides. Then, white was added in the eyeball to create highlights. Keep in mind that the eyeball is spherical, so wrapping the eyelids around the eyes this way helps to sell the illusion. I start bouncing around, adding some lighter fur to turkey ham's face and body. A conscious decision was made to not define his body too much, so the focus would be on his face and the daisy. I painted dark pink at the area under his nose and next to his top lips as there is less and shorter fur in that area. I then overlapped the same place with short grey furs, making sure to allow the pink to still peek through. I don't know why I took so long, but I finally decided to define the other eye with the previous techniques. Here, I decided it would be easier for me to just make all the brown fur on the face darker as a base color. At this point, I'm starting to notice that there's something wrong with the lower lip. The angle is off, and it kind of looks like he's pouting weirdly. I lightened the lower lip and repainted all the fur on his chin and lower cheeks. Now is the painstaking process of me gradually glazing lighter or darker fur to create volume. There is no rhyme or rhythm about it. I just shift around to wherever that is dry enough to overlap. The fur on the top of his head is made darker to match the fur pattern on the reference. Whiskers are tentatively added with my liner brush, black marker, as well as with a 0.5 white gel pen. I used the same methods for the small stray hairs all over his face. My fingers were then used to primitively rub away places that I find too bright or too dark. I added more light and shadow colors to the area around his paws, feet, and tummy for a little more definition. I also started to define the stem and leaf, adding a second leaf to make it look more interesting. White and neon yellow was glazed onto the right side of turkey ham to create a rim light effect. Rim light shines from the back and highlight the outline of the subject. More daisies are added to the foreground and blurred away so that they are not too eye-catching. In between painting the background, I decided that having turkey ham's lower incisors pick out would add to his cuteness. The background was changed one final time to a bokeh effect. Be prepared to destroy your flat brush if you want to try this effect my way. I twirl my flat brush upright to create as round a circle as I am able to and overlap them with various sizes and hues from the background. After this, we can finally move on to varnishing the painting. I apply a thin layer of Liquitex gloss varnish and spread it out gently with my sponge brush. I then use a lighter to pop all the bubbles that I see to prevent holes from forming when the varnish dries. The process is then repeated another 2 times. So this is how turkey ham looks like once the varnish is all dry. The date of the long list came and went during my video editing process, and guess what? I got in! I was surprised to see that I managed to squeeze into the long list since there are so many beautiful artworks in the mix. I'm thankful that I also get to send my artwork to the UK. I added a pair of D-rings and a wire to the back of my painting and printed my name on it as stated by the rules. I reused some old bubble wrap I have lying around and protected the corners with some cardboard meant for recycling. I also wrapped everything in a cardboard box I resized to fit, doodled a little on the box, and sent everything on its merry way. We will find out if turkey ham gets to join the exhibition on Thursday, 7 September. That is still a long way away, but I will post an update with the results when the time comes. Thank you for watching and being with me on this journey. Your support is really what keeps me going. Keep drawing, okay? Bye bye!